I never thought I'd feel awkward about going to the gym, but there I was, standing by the water fountain like I'd just been caught trying to sneak into a secret club. That's when he showed up. Jake, the guy I'd been sort of orbiting around for the past month without even realizing it. He wasn't the typical gym dude, in the sense that he wasn't all about flexing or blasting music so loud everyone 2 treadmills over could hear every beat. He had this calm confidence that made the whole place feel less intimidating, like he belonged to a world where sweat and grunting were just background noise. Our first official moment wasn't even planned. We'd kind of bumped into each other a few times, exchanging those awkward nods that gym-goers do to avoid actually talking. But one day, out of the blue, he asked if I wanted to team up for a couple of sets on the bench press. I said yes, mostly because it felt way less lonely than flying solo, and also because Jake had this easy smile that made the whole gym suddenly feel less like a gladiator arena. Jake is the kind of guy who looks like he spends half his life hiking or surfing, even though he's probably just as into video games as I am. His hair is always a little messy, like he just rolled out of bed or got caught in a breeze, and his eyes have this sharp focus, kind of like he's sizing up a challenge but also trying not to take it too seriously. When he talks, there's this casual warmth, like he's telling you about something cool he saw on YouTube, not something that's some big deal. So there we were, week after week, meeting up at the same time, pushing each other through reps and sets, spotting each other when the weights got heavy, and actually starting to look forward to gym time instead of dreading it. It was weirdly nice having someone who got what it meant to be the new guy in a place that's full of people who already know the ropes. One afternoon, after a particularly brutal leg day that left me wondering if I'd ever walk normally again, Jake surprised me. He said, "Hey, you want to come over and use my shower? The gym ones are kind of a nightmare, and I have these awesome towels that don't feel like sandpaper." I blinked, caught off guard. I mean, it was a totally casual invite, no big deal, but suddenly I was caught between feeling grateful, curious, and a little nervous. I wasn't sure what to expect. Was this just a friendly offer, or was there something else behind it? Plus, I'd never really hung out with a guy from the gym outside of the gym. The idea of stepping into his world felt like crossing some invisible line. But before I could overthink it, I found myself saying yes. Because honestly, after that leg day, I was ready to trade the gym's grimy showers for something a little more comfortable. And maybe, just maybe, see where this unexpected friendship might go. So after I agreed, Jake gave me his address and told me he'd meet me after I finished my last set. I wasn't sure what I was more nervous about, stepping into his place or dealing with the realization that maybe I was starting to care about this guy more than just as a workout partner. When I finished my routine, my legs wobbling like jelly, I headed out and texted him. A minute later, he showed up outside the gym, wearing a loose hoodie and those worn-in sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. The kind of casual that somehow pulled off looking effortlessly cool. "Ready?" he asked with that easy smile again. I nodded, feeling my heart do this stupid little flip. We got into his car, a beat-up hatchback that smelled faintly of pine air freshener and something clean, like detergent mixed with a hint of cologne. I thought about how weird it was that I was thinking about how his car smelled. His apartment wasn't far, just a few blocks away in this older building with cracked paint and creaky stairs that felt more like they belonged in a movie about college kids trying to survive finals week. Jake's place was on the 3rd floor. When he opened the door, I was hit by this warm, inviting vibe. It smelled faintly of eucalyptus and fresh laundry. Not at all what I expected from a gym rat. "You want a towel?" he asked, already heading toward the bathroom. I followed, trying not to stare too much at how casual he was being. His bathroom was small but clean, with a simple shower stall and a stack of those big fluffy towels he'd mentioned. "Thanks," I said, taking one. The thing was massive, and it felt like the softest thing I'd ever touched. "Don't mention it," he said, throwing me a grin. "Gym showers please me, right? Always freezing, or way too hot, and sometimes they smell like some kind of science experiment gone wrong." I laughed, and suddenly the awkwardness melted away just a little more. I could feel myself relaxing, the tension in my shoulders easing. He was just a guy. A nice guy who happened to be the person I'd been secretly hoping to get to know better. "So you live here alone?" I asked as I peeled off my sweaty shirt. Jake nodded, stepping out of the bathroom to grab some soap. Yeah, it's just me. Figured I'd make it simple, you know. No roommates, no drama. I liked that. Simplicity. Sometimes it was hard to find in the world or in people's lives. I'm impressed, I said, looking around. Place is clean, he shrugged. Gotta keep it decent if I want to keep my sanity. We both laughed, and then he looked at me in this way that made me catch my breath. Like he was trying to figure something out, but maybe deciding it was okay not to rush it. As I stepped into the shower, the warm water hit me and the heat started to chase the soreness out of my muscles. I could hear Jake moving around in the room outside the stall, humming a little tune I didn't recognize but found strangely comforting. The sound made the whole moment feel more human, more real. When I finished, I wrapped the towel around my waist and stepped out, feeling a little more confident than before. Jake handed me a fresh shirt and some shorts. Here, he said simply. You can borrow these if you want. I took them, surprised. Thanks. That's really nice of you. He gave me a shrug, pretending it was no big deal, but I caught the little smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. There was something in the way he looked at me now, like he was seeing me in a new light. We ended up sitting on his couch, just chatting like old friends. He told me about how he'd gotten into fitness after college, trying to balance the stress of work and life. I shared the usual awkward stories about my own attempts to avoid being a total disaster at the gym. At one point, the conversation dipped into music, and he reached over to put on a playlist. It was full of old indie rock and some chill electronic stuff. Nothing flashy, just good vibes. Then, out of nowhere, Jake looked at me and said, "You don't talk much about dating. Or about guys." I felt my face heat up. Yeah, well, I guess I'm not great at that stuff. He nodded, like he understood. Me neither, but it's okay to be scared. I was for a long time. There was this moment where everything was quiet except for the music, and I realized something. This wasn't just a gym buddy thing anymore. It was something different. Before I knew it, he was closer, just a little, and I could feel the warmth from his body. I think we both knew we were standing on the edge of something new, but just as I was about to say something, the moment slipped away. The doorbell rang. Jake groaned. That's my roommate. Ugh. I laughed, suddenly feeling a bit breathless and a whole lot more alive than I had all week. I had no idea what was coming next, but I was pretty sure my life just got a lot more interesting. Jake groaned again, rubbing the back of his neck. My roommate always picks the worst times to come home. I smiled, suddenly grateful for the interruption. That tension between us had gotten pretty intense, and part of me wasn't ready to deal with it yet. Not that I wasn't curious, but I still had this wall up, the kind you build after too many bad experiences with opening up. He went to the door and opened it, and in walked this other guy who looked like the complete opposite of Jake, tall, with a buzz cut, and wearing a graphic tee with a vintage band logo on it. He threw a quick nod our way. Hey man, what's up? The roommate said, dropping his backpack next to the couch. Jake rolled his eyes. Nothing. Just hanging with, this guy the first met at the gym. The roommate glanced over at me, then back to Jake. Cool. New friend? Yeah, something like that, Jake said. But there was a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth like he knew exactly what that something like that meant. I felt a little awkward, sitting there with this stranger suddenly a part of the scene. But the roommate was chill, and he didn't pry, so the moment passed fast. Anyway, Jake said, I'll catch you later, man. He gave his roommate a quick fist bump and then closed the door. We both sank back onto the couch. The vibe had shifted, but somehow it felt even more natural. Like this was how things were supposed to be. Not some perfect movie scene, but just real life, messy and unpredictable. So I said, trying to break the silence, how long have you lived here with him? Jake shrugged. About a year. We met in college. Good roommate. Not so great timing. He gave me that crooked smile again, like he was half joking, but maybe not. Sounds like it keeps things interesting, I said. Yeah, you could say that. He leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. But enough about roommates. Tell me more about you. What do you actually want from coming to the gym, besides avoiding death on the treadmill? I laughed. Honestly, mostly trying to get in shape, but also trying not to feel invisible, you know? Gym was kind of intimidating at first, but meeting you made it easier. He smiled, and I swear I felt my cheeks heat up. Invisible? You're definitely not invisible. You've got this quiet thing that's, I don't know, kind of magnetic. I looked down at my hands. Thanks. That means a lot. We sat there for a moment, just sharing that space. Then Jake surprised me by reaching out, brushing his fingers lightly against mine. Hey, he said softly, if you ever want to hang out outside the gym or shower invites, just say the word. I didn't say anything right away, because suddenly everything inside me was spinning a little too fast. But then I nodded, feeling a strange kind of hope bubbling up. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'd like that. Something about that simple exchange made everything seem possible. Later, as the evening stretched on, Jake made us some sandwiches. Nothing fancy, just good, honest food. We talked about music, movies, the kinds of dumb things we'd done when we were younger. The more I learned about him, the more I liked. Not just the way he looked or how confident he seemed, but the real stuff. The little cracks and quirks that made him human. At one point, he asked, "So what's the biggest thing holding you back from dating?" I hesitated, then shrugged. Fear, mostly. Fear of getting hurt, of being judged, of being the other guy who doesn't quite fit in. He nodded, like he got it without me having to explain more. Yeah, that please mess. We felt quiet after that, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like a pause where both of us were just thinking, maybe wondering what would happen next. When it was time for me to leave, I realized I didn't want the night to end. But I knew I had to go before things got too complicated. As I stepped out the door, Jake grabbed my hand. It was brief, but his grip was firm. I looked up into his eyes, and for a second, everything else disappeared. See you at the gym tomorrow? He asked. Definitely, I said, smiling. Walking down the stairs, I couldn't stop thinking about that shower invite, about the easy way he made me feel seen. For once, I wasn't just another guy trying to survive the gym. I was someone who might just be starting something real. And honestly, that felt incredible. The next day, I was both excited and nervous to see Jake again. I showed up at the gym a little earlier than usual, heart thudding like I'd just run a marathon, even though I'd barely warmed up yet. Weird how someone else can make the whole routine feel different, less about just lifting weights, and more about, I don't know, connection. Jake was already there, warming up with some stretches near the free weights. When he caught sight of me, he flashed that same easy smile, like nothing had changed but everything had. You're early, he teased. Couldn't sleep, I admitted, feeling like a dork. He chuckled. Fair enough. Ready to destroy some leg day? We dove into the workout, me trying to push past the usual mental block that made every squat feel like the last thing I wanted to do. But Jake was patient, encouraging without being preachy. Every time I looked over, he'd catch my eye and give me this thumbs up or a quick nod, and it made me feel like I wasn't just flailing around there blindly. After a while, we decided to take a break, sitting on the bench near the window that overlooked the street. The gym was starting to fill up, but in that little bubble, it felt like it was just the two of us. So, Jake said, breaking the comfortable silence, "What's your plan after this?" I shrugged, unsure how to answer. Nothing much. Maybe grab a smoothie, then head home. He raised an eyebrow. Sounds lonely, I laughed. Yeah, well, sometimes it's nice. You? Same. But I was thinking, maybe you should come over after. I can make dinner this time. My heart skipped. Dinner? You cook? Occasionally, he said, grinning. I make a mean pasta. For a second, I hesitated, the insecurities bubbling up. Hanging out at his place again, that was different, more personal. But then I remembered the way his eyes had held mine the night before, how safe I'd felt sitting on his couch. Yeah, I said, surprising myself. I'd like that. We finished our sets, and as I packed up my stuff, I felt this growing excitement mixed with the nervous flutter in my stomach. It was weird how someone from the gym, of all places, could start feeling like the most important person in your week. That evening, I found myself standing in front of Jake's door again, the familiar mix of anticipation and nerve swirling. When he opened it, he was wearing that same relaxed look, but this time with a hint of something softer in his eyes. "Hey," he said, stepping aside to let me in. Inside, the apartment smelled even better, like garlic and something herby. Jake was already at the stove, stirring a pot, and the kitchen looked more lived-in than before. There were pictures on the fridge, some framed on the walls, and a couple of small plants by the window that gave the room a cozy vibe. "You're early," he said with a smile. "Didn't want to be late for dinner," I teased, setting down my bag. As he moved around the kitchen, I watched him out of the corner of my eye. Every small gesture felt intimate, like I was getting a glimpse of a side of him most people didn't see, and that made my chest tighten in a good way. While he cooked, we talked about everything and nothing. Work, music, the dumbest movies we'd seen recently. The conversation flowed easily, laughter mixing with the clatter of pots and pans. At one point, he reached over to grab some basil from a little pot on the windowsill and handed me a leaf. "Try this," he said, and I popped it in my mouth. It was fresh and spicy, and I couldn't help but smile. "Okay, chef," I said, "you're winning me over." When dinner was finally ready, we ate at the small table near the window. The food was way better than I expected, simple but full of flavor. Between bites, Jake kept stealing glances at me, and I felt myself getting braver. "Can I ask you something?" I said, setting down my fork. "Shoot. Why did you invite me over the first time?" "To shower, I mean. It's kind of unusual." He laughed softly. "Honestly, I thought you were cool, and I wanted to hang out somewhere less sweaty than the gym. Plus, it gave me an excuse to talk to you without feeling like I was being weird." I grinned, feeling a rush of relief. "Glad it wasn't some elaborate ploy." "Nope," he said, shaking his head. "Just me being awkward." We ended up sitting on the couch afterward, the evening winding down. The city lights flickered outside the window, and the quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of possibility. Then, without thinking too much, I leaned in a little closer. Jake didn't pull away. Instead, he met me halfway, his hand finding mine on the couch. That simple touch sent a jolt through me, the kind of spark you read about but never expect to feel in real life. "Hey," he whispered. "Hey," I replied, heart pounding. For a moment, time slowed and everything else faded. It was just us, two guys who met by chance at the gym, maybe a little broken, definitely nervous, but willing to see where this could go. I didn't know what the future held, but right then, I was exactly where I wanted to be. I remember the way his hand felt in mine, warm, steady, like an anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Neither of us said much at first, just letting the moments stretch out between us. The kind of silence that's not awkward, but full of something unspoken, like the calm before a storm you're secretly hoping will pour. Jake was the first to break it. His voice was low, a little hesitant. "So, this is new." I laughed softly, the tension easing from my shoulders. "Yeah, new's kind of the theme today, huh?" He smiled, that easy, genuine one that made my chest tighten again. "I've been thinking about this since you left last time, about how sometimes you meet someone and something clicks." I nodded, feeling my heart speed up. "Me too. I wasn't expecting it, but it feels right." We sat there, fingers still intertwined, and I realized how rare it was to find someone who made you feel seen without having to explain yourself. It wasn't just about the gym or the dinners or the little moments we'd shared. It was about how he made me feel like I mattered. After a while, Jake shifted closer, his other hand brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. "You ever wonder if things could actually work? Like, not just a fling or something casual, but real?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I do. But it's scary." "Same here." He looked down for a second, then met my gaze again. "But maybe scary is okay if it's with the right person." There was a quiet courage in his words that made me want to believe it, want to take that leap. We stayed like that for a while, talking about fears and hopes and the weird ways life throws you curveballs. I told him about past relationships that had left me hesitant, about the times I felt invisible or like I had to hide parts of myself. He shared his own stories, some funny, some painful. What struck me was how honest he was, how willing to be vulnerable without any pretense. It made me want to do the same. At one point, Jake stood up and walked over to his bookshelf. pulling down a small photo album. He handed it to me with a shy smile. "Thought you might like to see the real me," he said. Flipping through the pages, I saw pictures of him hiking with friends, goofy shots from college parties, and quiet moments by the beach. There was one photo that caught my eye, a candid shot of him laughing so hard his eyes were squinting. It felt like I was seeing a side of him only a few people got to see. "Thanks for sharing this," I said softly. "Thanks for being here," he replied, sitting back down beside me. The evening slipped away as we continued talking, the connection between us growing deeper with every word. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't rushed. It was real, messy and beautiful all at once. Eventually, the conversation drifted to what we wanted moving forward. Neither of us wanted to force anything, but we both wanted to see where this could go. Before I left that night, Jake walked me to the door. We stood there for a moment, neither ready to say goodbye. And then he leaned in slowly, giving me a gentle kiss that was soft but full of promise. When we pulled apart, his eyes were full of warmth. "See you at the gym tomorrow?" he asked. "Definitely," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. Walking away, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. Maybe this was just the beginning of something I hadn't dared to hope for. A connection that went beyond the weights and sweat and awkward small talk. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see where it led. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mix of excitement and nerves. Like I'd just agreed to jump off a cliff, but hadn't quite figured out how to land yet. The usual dread of the gym was replaced by a quiet anticipation I couldn't shake. I kept wondering what Jake would say when I saw him again, if things would feel different or if we'd just fall back into our comfortable groove. When I got to the gym, he was already there, casually leaning against the wall near the entrance, scrolling through his phone. The moment our eyes met, that familiar smile spread across his face, and it felt like coming home after being lost for a while. "Morning, early bird," he teased. Couldn't wait. I shot back, trying to sound cooler than I felt. We started our workout, the usual banter flowing easily, but there was something new simmering beneath the surface, a quiet electricity that made every glance and touch linger just a bit longer. We pushed each other harder, not just physically, but in the small ways that mattered. Spotting without being asked, sharing water bottles, those quick accidental brushes of hands. After the session, Jake suggested grabbing coffee at the little cafe across the street. I almost said no. I'm not exactly a social butterfly, but something about wanting to spend more time with him won out. The cafe was cozy, with mismatched chairs and a wall covered in local art. We found a corner table, and for a while just sat there, sipping coffee, watching people come and go. So, Jake started, stirring his drink. "How do you feel about all this?" "Us, I mean." I looked at him, trying to put into words what was swirling inside me. Honestly, it's kind of scary, but also exciting. I haven't felt this way in a long time. He nodded, eyes soft. "Same here. I'm glad you took that shower invite. I know it sounds silly, but it was the first time I really felt like maybe I could be myself around someone." I smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "You've made the gym something I actually look forward to." We talked about life outside the gym, the little things that make up who we are. Jake told me about his job as a graphic designer, how he loved the creative freedom but sometimes struggled with deadlines. I shared stories about my work in IT, the long hours, and how I often felt like I was just going through the motions. The conversation took a turn when I admitted, I've always been kind of guarded. Dating just felt like too much sometimes. Jake leaned in, his voice gentle. "I get that. I've been there too. But maybe it's about finding someone who makes all the scary stuff worth it." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that maybe this wasn't just a fleeting thing, but something real and lasting. Over the next few weeks, our routine became a mix of gym sessions, dinners at his place or mine, and lazy Sundays, where we'd binge watch shows and order takeout. We learned each other's quirks, the way Jake always left dishes in the sink until the last possible minute, how I had a terrible habit of overthinking everything. One evening, after a late workout, we found ourselves sitting on his balcony, wrapped in blankets against the chill. The city lights twinkled below us, and for once, the noise of the world felt distant and unimportant. Jake turned to me, eyes reflecting the glow of the street lamps. "I'm glad we took a chance on this." "Me too," I whispered. He smiled, the kind of smile that reaches your soul. "So where do you want this to go?" I hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Honestly, I want to see where it leads. No pressure, no expectations. Just us." He nodded, leaning his forehead against mine. "That sounds perfect." In that moment, everything felt right. The past anxieties, the fears, they all seemed to fade away, replaced by something hopeful and new. Maybe love wasn't supposed to be easy or perfect. Maybe it was about finding someone who stood by you, even when everything else felt uncertain. And with Jake, I was finally ready to take that leap. Months passed, and what started as those tentative gym sessions and casual dinners grew into something quietly steady. Not the kind of whirlwind romance you read about in movies, but something real. The easy comfort of knowing someone's there, the small moments that add up and make life feel fuller. One evening, after a long day that left me drained, I found myself back at Jake's apartment. We had no grand plans, just ordering pizza and watching a dumb comedy neither of us really cared about. But that's what felt right. Simple, unpretentious, shared. He looked over at me during a commercial break, his eyes soft. "You okay?" I nodded, though honestly, it had been one of those days where being around someone who gets you makes all the difference. "Yeah, just tired." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you're here." And in that moment, I realized how much I'd come to depend on him, not in some overwhelming way, but in the quiet, essential ways that matter. We talked about everything and nothing, laughter filling the spaces between words. Then, without any fanfare, Jake leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't flashy or desperate. It was calm, steady, full of meaning. Pulling back, he smiled. "I'm really glad I invited you to shower that day." I laughed, feeling warmth spread through me. "Me too." Later, as I walked home under the night sky, I thought about how far I'd come, from feeling like a stranger in the gym to finding someone who made me feel seen and wanted. It wasn't magic or fireworks. It was something better, a connection built on patience, honesty, and a quiet kind of trust. Love, I realized, didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. And with Jake, it was exactly that.